What kind of man asks for a divorce at his wife's mother's burial while she's 7 months pregnant? People say you can tell when something is about to go wrong, but that morning in Modesto, California, it wasn't a feeling Naomi Benton could put into words. It was more like her body was tired in places grief doesn't normally touch. She stood near the burial plot with her hands pressed against her belly, her breath moving slow as she tried to steady herself. The air felt thick, almost humid, even though it was early. Family members gathered in small circles, whispering to each other, passing tissues, brushing raindrops from their jackets. Naomi wasn't paying attention to any of that. Her eyes were on a single spot, the polished mahogany casket that held her mother. She tried swallowing the knot in her throat, but it only tightened. She leaned slightly toward her husband, Ethan Caldwell, the man who was supposed to be her anchor. She slipped her fingers around his, hoping for a squeeze back, hoping for something warm, something human. But Ethan didn't move. He stood rigid, almost stiff, his eyes fixed somewhere far away, past the headstones, past the gathering crowd, past the moment she desperately needed him present. His jaw twitched slightly, but he didn't look at her, not even once. Naomi whispered, "Are you okay?" Her voice was small, fragile, the kind of voice that comes from a person who has run out of strength but has to keep going. Ethan let out a short breath, like she had annoyed him. "I'm fine, just tired." Tired. The word echoed in her mind. He'd been saying it a lot lately. Tired, stressed, busy, overwhelmed, and each time the distance between them grew a little more. She'd chalked it up to work, to late hours, to the baby coming soon, but standing here now, something felt off. Not wrong, not dramatic, just off. Her aunt, Lorraine, stepped next to her, handing her a clean tissue. "Sweetheart, if you need to sit, we can grab a chair." "I'm okay," Naomi said. "I just need a minute." Lorraine nodded softly and moved back, giving her space. Naomi turned again to Ethan, hoping this time he'd meet her eyes. Maybe he'd brush her cheek. Maybe he'd whisper he was here. Maybe he'd do anything at all. But Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He flinched, just slightly, but enough for Naomi to notice. Enough for her to watch the color leave his face for a quick second before he took a slow step backward and dug the phone out. He shielded the screen with his hand, glancing down at it like he was hiding something. Naomi blinked. Was he seriously checking messages right now? She whispered, "Ethan, please, can you just be here with me?" He didn't answer. He slid the phone back into his pocket with a sigh, but even that tiny gesture felt like it cost him effort. And when he finally faced her, his expression wasn't tender. It wasn't supportive. It wasn't even sad. It was blank, as if he were watching a stranger's loss instead of living through his wife's. She felt her pulse rising, and the pain in her chest made it hard to breathe. Something was wrong. Something more than grief, more than exhaustion, more than the weight of the baby inside her kicking softly, like she could sense her mother's pain. Naomi whispered, "Can we talk after this? Please? I need to—" Ethan cut her off sharply. "Not now." His tone wasn't harsh, but the coldness behind it made her shiver. The pastor began speaking, his voice floating through the rows of mourners as the first few drops of rain hit the grass. People pulled jackets over their heads, but nobody stepped away. Naomi stayed still, staring at her mother's name engraved on the brass plaque, trying to let the words being spoken comfort her. But they felt far away. Ethan shuffled his feet. He glanced sideways, and Naomi saw it again. That distant look, the one a person gets when they're somewhere they don't want to be. She whispered, "You've barely looked at me all week." This time, Ethan's expression cracked. Only slightly, but enough for her to see irritation replace emptiness. "Naomi," he muttered, "can we not do this here?" "Do what?" she asked softly. He opened his mouth, then stopped. His hand twitched. His eyes flicked toward the parking lot for half a second before he looked down at the ground, and that's when Naomi's stomach tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the baby. A sinking, quiet realization settled inside her. Ethan wasn't tired. Ethan wasn't stressed. Ethan wasn't overwhelmed. Ethan didn't want to be here. Not with her. Not today. Not in this moment that mattered more than any moment they had lived together in years. She inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself, but Ethan was already turning away from her a second time. She felt something inside her shift, something she couldn't name yet. But it was heavy, heavier than the grief, heavier than the rain. But what Naomi didn't know, not yet, is that this heaviness was only the beginning, and that the truth Ethan had been hiding was waiting right behind the next moment, ready to hit her harder than anything grief had done to her that morning. But before she finds out, someone else is about to make a move that changes everything. The pastor's voice faded into the background as Naomi tried to steady her breathing. She focused on the rhythm of her baby shifting inside her, hoping it would help her stay grounded. But Ethan kept shifting his weight from one foot to the other, glancing around like he was waiting for something or someone. When the final prayer ended, relatives stepped forward to place roses on the casket. Naomi moved slowly, clutching her belly with one hand and holding the rose with the other. Each step felt heavier than the last. She waited for Ethan to come with her, to walk beside her, to at least pretend he cared. He didn't move. Lorraine touched Naomi's shoulder. "Honey, do you want me to go with you?" Naomi forced a small breath. "No, I need him." She turned back toward Ethan. He was staring at the ground, his hands buried in his pockets. She walked to him, her voice trembling. "Ethan, please, this is my mother." He didn't even blink. "I said I'm here." "Physically," she murmured, "but not with me." He exhaled sharply through his nose, the kind of breath someone takes when they've run out of patience. For the first time all morning, he met her eyes, and what she saw there made her stomach drop. "That's enough, Naomi," he said quietly. Enough? Enough of what? Her grief? Her pain? The life they'd built together? "Come with me," she whispered, "just for a minute, away from everyone." Ethan hesitated. His jaw tightened slightly, just a flicker, but it told her everything. He didn't want to go with her, not even for a moment. But finally, he followed. They stepped a few yards away, near a row of older graves under a patch of overgrown grass. The rain picked up, tapping lightly on the umbrella Naomi's uncle had loaned her. Ethan didn't bother to take cover. He stayed in the open, looking irritated, almost restless. Naomi clutched the umbrella tighter. "Ethan, what's going on with you? You've been distant for months. You barely talk to me. You sleep on the couch half the time. I thought maybe it was work, or the stress of the baby coming, but right now, right here, you're acting like you don't even want to stand next to me." He didn't answer. "Please," she said softly, "say something." Ethan rubbed his face with one hand, then looked at her. "I can't do this anymore." Her heartbeat stuttered. "Do what?" "This marriage." The words hit her like a physical blow. She blinked, certain she'd misheard him. "Ethan, don't say that. Not now, not here." "I'm serious," he said. "I want out." The umbrella slipped from her fingers and hit the ground, bouncing once before landing in the wet grass. Rain began hitting her face directly, but she barely felt it. She whispered, "You can't be saying this at my mother's burial." "I didn't plan it," he muttered. "Then why now?" she cried. "Why today of all days?" Ethan lifted his chin slightly. "Because I can't keep pretending. I'm done pretending." Naomi felt dizzy. Her hand instinctively went to her belly again, as if shielding the baby from the words slicing through her. "What changed?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He hesitated for a split second, long enough to confirm he was hiding something, but then he said, "Everything. I'm not happy. I haven't been for a long time." Her throat tightened. "So you leave me now? When I'm 7 months pregnant? When my mother is being lowered into the ground?" "I should have said something sooner," he replied, eyes shifting away. "But I didn't want to fight about it." She stepped closer, searching his face. "Is there someone else?" Ethan froze. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. Naomi's breath caught. "There is," she whispered. He didn't deny it. He didn't reassure her. He didn't even look embarrassed. Tears pooled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "How long?" "Naomi, how long?" she repeated, her voice sharper. He swallowed. "Almost a year." The world spun. The weight of the moment crushed her. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the nearest headstone to steady herself. Lorraine rushed toward her, shouting her name. A few relatives hurried over, surrounding Naomi as she shook uncontrollably. "What did you do to her?" Lorraine snapped at Ethan. Ethan stepped back. "I told her the truth." Truth, Lorraine shouted. You broke her! Naomi sank to the ground, clutching her stomach as tears streamed down her face. She wasn't thinking about the baby, the rain, or the people watching. She was thinking about the man standing 3 feet away who had once promised her forever, and he couldn't even offer comfort. Ethan exhaled slowly, looked at the parking lot and said, I'm leaving. Lorraine almost lunged at him, but 2 cousins held her back. Naomi's voice cracked as she whispered, Please, don't go. Ethan didn't turn around. He didn't bend down. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked, and Naomi felt something inside her fracture in a way no doctor could ever fix. But Ethan thinks he's walking toward a better life, when in reality, he's stepping into a disaster he created himself. Ethan reached his car with rain dripping off his hair, his steps fast and uneven, like he was trying to outrun what he'd just done. His hands shook when he unlocked the door. For a second, he stared at his reflection in the window, eyes wild, chest heaving, as if even he couldn't believe the words that had come out of his mouth. But instead of going back, instead of checking on his pregnant wife who had collapsed on the wet ground, he pulled out his phone. A message sat on the screen. Claire, are you coming? I can't wait much longer. His jaw clenched. He typed back quickly. Ethan, leaving now. He climbed into the driver's seat and slammed the door. The silence inside the car wrapped around him. No crying, no pastor's voice, no whispers from relatives looking at him like he was a monster. He almost felt relieved. Almost. He started the engine and pulled onto the street, heading across town toward a small rental house on Tully Road. The windshield wipers swiped away the rain, but not the image of Naomi falling to her knees. He gripped the steering wheel harder. She'll be fine, he muttered to himself. She has her family. He said it again, louder this time. She'll be fine. But the words didn't sound right. They felt thin, weak. Still, he kept driving. The house came into view, a tiny one-story with chipped white paint and a sagging porch. Claire hated how it looked. She wanted Ethan to get them a bigger place, something with more light, more space, more money. But Ethan could barely afford the rent now that he was splitting expenses between 2 lives. He parked and took a long breath before knocking on the door. Claire opened it almost instantly. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and the oversized t-shirt stretched tightly over her 8-month belly. She looked tired, swollen eyes, swollen ankles. But when she saw Ethan, she cracked a smile. There you are, she whispered, reaching for his shirt. He stepped inside. She closed the door behind him. She kissed him first, quick and hungry, but when she pulled back, she studied his face like she was searching for clues. What happened? You look shaken. Ethan forced a tight smirk. I told her. Claire's eyes widened. You did? Yeah, it's done, he says. So he died, he said, brushing rain off his jacket. I told Naomi I want a divorce. Claire placed her hands on her belly, almost relieved. Finally, I didn't think you'd actually say it today. He shrugged. Had to happen at some point. She raised an eyebrow. At a burial? Ethan, that's not exactly... She cornered me, he snapped. Started asking what was wrong. She kept pushing. I couldn't keep lying. Claire tilted her head slightly. And how did she take it? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the narrow kitchen, pretending to be focused on a glass of water. Claire followed him, one hand pressing into her lower back. Ethan, she said quietly. How did she take it? He swallowed hard. Not well. Claire let out a breath. She'll get over it. Maybe, he murmured, but her family watched the whole thing. Well, of course they'd be upset, Claire replied. You're leaving a pregnant woman at a cemetery. Nobody's going to clap for you. Ethan shot her a glare. You wanted this. Claire held up her hands. I wanted you to make a decision. I didn't tell you to announce it while she was crying over a casket. He ran a hand through his hair. She kept pressing. I couldn't breathe. Claire moved closer. You're here now. That's what matters. But something shifted in her tone. Something that wasn't softness. It was closer to possession, as if taking him from Naomi wasn't enough. She needed him entirely. Sit down, she said, guiding him to the couch. Tell me everything. Ethan sank onto the cushions. He took a slow breath. She asked if there was someone else. Claire's expression tightened. And? I didn't lie, he said. I told her yes. Claire blinked. You told her about me? Not by name, he replied. But she knows. Claire rested a hand on her belly again. Well, that's that. She'll get used to it. She doesn't really have a choice. He flinched at the words. She's 7 months pregnant. Claire frowned. And so am I. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time something uneasy flickered inside him. Not regret, not guilt, just uncertainty. Claire was wonderful at first, funny, bold, full of energy. He'd felt alive around her, like he was 20 again. But now, with the baby almost here, she wasn't light anymore. She was pressure, constant pressure. When are you telling her about the baby? Claire asked. Ethan's blood ran cold. I'm not. She stiffened. Why not? Because she doesn't need to know right now. We're barely sorting out the divorce. Claire stared at him. You promised you'd tell her. He shook his head. I said I'd handle it. She crossed her arms. Ethan, she deserves to know. He snapped back. She can barely stand without crying. I'm not piling another thing on her. Claire's eyes narrowed. So what? Are you planning to hide our child? That's not what I said. Claire let out a humorless laugh. It feels like that. Ethan's frustration boiled over. Claire, stop. I'm doing my best. No, she said, voice rising. You're doing what makes you comfortable, not what's right. And now that things are real, you're scared. He stood up. I'm not scared. You're terrified, she shot back. Terrified of what people will think. Terrified of being judged. Terrified of consequences. He stared at her, chest tight. She wasn't completely wrong. Claire softened a bit, lowering her voice. I just need you to be all in, Ethan. For me. For this baby. You said you were choosing us. He rubbed the back of his neck. I did. Then act like it. For a moment, the room fell silent except for the rain tapping the window. Ethan looked at Claire. He looked at her swollen belly. He looked at the tiny living room that smelled faintly of baby powder and leftover spaghetti, and a quiet fear crept into him. A fear he couldn't put a name to. He'd walked away from Naomi thinking he was stepping into a fresh start. Instead, he'd stepped into a life already full of demands he wasn't ready to face. But this new life isn't finished, reminding him just how deeply he's tangled himself. And the next turn is going to hit him harder than he expects. Naomi lay in the back seat of her cousin's SUV while they drove her home, her cheek pressed against the cold leather. She wasn't crying anymore. She couldn't. Her body had drained itself completely. Her chest hurt from the sobs earlier, her throat burned, and her eyes felt swollen and raw. Lorraine sat in the seat beside her, holding her hand as if letting go would make Naomi crumble into pieces right there. Honey, slow breaths, Lorraine whispered. Nice and calm. Naomi nodded weakly. The baby nudged her ribs, a small reminder that she wasn't alone, no matter how hollow she felt. When they reached her house, Naomi stepped out slowly, one hand steadying her belly. The porch felt unfamiliar, as if she were walking into someone else's life. The curtains in the living room window were half closed. The doormat Ethan picked out last year still sat in front of the door. The garden hose he'd left tangled up last week was still lying in the yard. It all looked ordinary, but her world was ruined. Inside, her uncle helped her to the couch. Lorraine fetched a warm blanket, draping it over her shoulders the way Naomi's mother used to do whenever she felt sick. Naomi stared at the wall, words stuck in her throat. For a long moment, no one said anything. The room stayed quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Finally, Naomi whispered, "He didn't even look back." Lorraine squeezed her hand. "A man who can walk away like that, baby, he's not the one who deserves you." Naomi shook her head weakly. "I thought he loved me." Her uncle sat on the coffee table, leaning forward. Love doesn't make someone leave you at a cemetery. That wasn't love. Whatever he was feeling, it wasn't love. The words stung, but not because they were harsh, because they were true. Naomi brought both hands to her face. "What am I going to do?" Lorraine moved closer. "You're going to breathe. You're going to take things 1 hour at a time. And you're going to remember that you have people who will walk through this with you." Naomi wiped her cheeks. "Was it something I did? Something I didn't do?" "No," Lorraine said firmly. "This is on him, not you." Naomi leaned back, her fingers trembling. She remembered the way Ethan had looked at her, cold, distant, irritated. She remembered how he flinched at his phone like someone was controlling him. She whispered, "He's been lying to me." Her uncle sat up straight. "About what?" "Everything," she said. "It wasn't just work. It wasn't stress. It was something else." Lorraine met her eyes. "Someone else." Naomi closed her eyes tightly. She didn't want to speak it out loud, but the truth pressed on her chest until she forced herself to say it. He didn't deny it. Silence filled the room. And then Naomi broke again. Not the screaming kind, not the collapsing kind. Just quiet, painful tears that rolled down her face as she held her belly. "I didn't even see it," she whispered. "I didn't notice, because I trusted him so much." Lorraine leaned closer. "Sweetheart, you were grieving your mother. You were preparing for your baby. You weren't expecting betrayal. You were expecting support." Naomi sniffed. "I gave him everything I could, everything I had." Her uncle looked down, thoughtful for a moment. Then he spoke in a low voice. "Your mother didn't raise you to be anyone's second choice." The words cut cleanly through the air. Naomi felt an invisible shift inside her. A small one, but real. A crack where light could eventually enter. She wasn't strong yet. She wasn't healed. But something inside her stirred. Something she hadn't felt since before her mother got sick. A thin thread of resolve. Lorraine stood. "There's something else we need to talk about," she said gently. "But we'll do it when you've had some water." Naomi blinked. "What do you mean?" "Let me grab the papers," Lorraine said, heading to the hallway. "Your mom wanted you to have them. She told me everything before she passed." Naomi frowned. "Papers?" Her uncle exchanged a glance with Lorraine, one of those glances that meant they'd been keeping something quiet, waiting for the right moment. Naomi sat up straighter. "What kind of papers?" Lorraine returned, holding a large envelope, thick enough to need rubber bands around it. She placed it carefully on Naomi's lap. "Your mother left something behind," Lorraine said softly. "And she made me promise to give it to you after today." Naomi stared at the envelope. Her heart thudded painfully. "What is this?" "Everything she never told you," her uncle said. "Everything she didn't want you and Ethan to depend on." Naomi swallowed hard. The weight of the envelope felt unreal. "I don't understand." "You will," Lorraine murmured. "And, Naomi, this is going to change things." Naomi touched the edge of the envelope with her fingertips, not ready to open it yet. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Is it bad?" Lorraine shook her head slowly. "No, sweetheart. It's the opposite." Naomi exhaled shakily. For the first time since the cemetery, something in her chest loosened, just a little. She didn't know what was inside. She couldn't imagine anything helping her right now, not after losing her mother and her husband in the same hour. But Lorraine's expression wasn't pity, it was reassurance. And that alone made Naomi's pulse quicken. But before she opens those papers, the truth about her mother and her own future is about to turn everything upside down. Naomi stared at the thick envelope on her lap as if it might start moving on its own. The room felt heavier, quieter. Even the air conditioner seemed to hush itself. Lorraine sat beside her, gently rubbing her back, while her uncle watched with a steady expression that hid more emotion than he let show. Naomi finally whispered, "Can someone open it for me? My hands are shaking too much." Lorraine nodded. "Of course, honey." She slid off the rubber bands and opened the flap. Inside were several neatly stacked documents, some typed, some handwritten. A few had official seals from banks Naomi had never heard of. Lorraine laid the first page on the coffee table. Naomi hesitated. "What is all this?" Her uncle leaned forward. "Start with this one," he said, handing her a single sheet printed with a law office header and a date from just 2 weeks ago. Naomi took a deep breath and read the top line aloud. "This is the last updated will and testament of Teresa Benton." Her voice cracked halfway through her mother's name, but she forced herself to continue. She owed her mother that much. Lorraine reached over and pointed to a paragraph half down the page. "Start there." Naomi followed her finger and read slowly. "I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, accounts, and personal holdings, to my daughter, Naomi Benton." She frowned. "Entire estate? What estate?" Her uncle let out a breath. Naomi, your mother didn't live the life you thought she did. Naomi blinked. She worked at the hardware store for 20 years. That was by choice, Lorraine said. She didn't need the money. She liked the work. It kept her grounded. Naomi shook her head. This can't be right. We barely made rent when I was a kid. That's because she was saving everything, Lorraine replied softly. Your mother lived modestly because she didn't trust people's intentions. She wanted you to grow up strong, independent, not expecting anyone to hand you anything. Naomi stared at the paper again, her pulse pounding harder. How much are we talking about? Lorraine reached for another document, a financial summary printed across 3 pages. She set it gently in front of Naomi. You might want to sit back, her uncle said. Naomi swallowed hard and flipped the first page. There were columns of numbers, lists of assets, property addresses, investment accounts, and something about tech shares purchased decades ago before any of the companies were worth anything. When she reached the bottom of the second page, her breath stopped. Her voice came out thin and quiet. This says, $512 million? Lorraine nodded. That's the last valuation her lawyer gave. Your mother built it slowly, carefully, over years. Some of those investments multiplied beyond anything she expected. Naomi's ears rang. She wasn't sure if she was breathing. Her uncle leaned closer. Your mother wanted to tell you earlier, but when she got sick, she wanted to protect you. She wanted to wait until the right moment, a moment when you needed strength the most. Naomi's eyes filled again, but this time the tears felt different, less like heartbreak and more like disbelief wrapped in grief. She never said a word, Naomi whispered. Not once. She didn't want Ethan knowing, Lorraine said carefully. She didn't want him or anyone shaping your future for their own benefit. Naomi flinched. You think she didn't trust him? Lorraine hesitated. Then she said, Your mother had good instincts. Naomi looked at the documents again. Her entire life, every struggle, every sacrifice her mother made, suddenly took on a new shape. Her mother hadn't been poor. She'd been careful, strategic, protecting her daughter's future from the wrong people. Her uncle cleared his throat. There's more. Naomi's heart thumped. More? Lorraine picked up a smaller envelope with Naomi's name written in her mother's handwriting. Curved, neat, familiar. Naomi's breath caught. She wrote you a letter, Lorraine said softly. Naomi took it with trembling hands. She closed her eyes before opening it, bracing herself for whatever came next. Then she unfolded the page. Her mother's voice came alive in her head with the first sentence. My sweet Naomi, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you, and I'm sorry for leaving you so soon. Naomi pressed her hand to her mouth. Lorraine reached out, squeezing her shoulder gently, but urging her to keep reading. I spent my life teaching you how to stand on your own feet because I knew one day you might need to. People can surprise us, with kindness, yes, but also with selfishness. I didn't want anyone taking advantage of your heart. You give so much, too much sometimes. I wanted your future safe, no matter who stayed or who walked away. Naomi blinked rapidly, trying to see the words through her tears. I didn't want the world or any man to have power over your peace. This inheritance is for you and your child, not for anyone else. Use it wisely, protect it, and remember your worth. A tear slid down Naomi's cheek as she whispered, Mom. She read the final line slowly. You were born to rise above pain, not drown in it. Naomi lowered the letter onto her lap, her chest tightening in a way that wasn't panic. This time it was something deeper. Something awakening. Her uncle leaned forward. You're not alone, Naomi, and you're not broken. You're about to step into a life your mother built with love and foresight. Naomi wiped her face, breathing shakily. She saved all this for me? Yes, Lorraine said. For you and your baby. For the first time since the burial, Naomi sat up taller. The grief was still there, still aching, but it was no longer the only thing filling her. There was something else now, something steady, something powerful. She didn't feel healed, but she felt supported, and that was enough for the moment. But while Naomi is beginning to recover, Ethan is about to discover the kind of truth that doesn't just sting. It cuts deep enough to haunt him. Ethan sat on the edge of Claire's couch, with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might give him answers. Claire shuffled back and forth between the kitchen and the living room, one hand pressed against her lower back. Her breathing was sharp, irritated. The house felt smaller than ever, tighter, warmer, tense in a way Ethan could no longer ignore. "So," Claire said, breaking the silence, "what's the plan now? You're staying here full time?" Ethan dragged a hand over his face. "I don't know." Claire stopped mid-step. "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean, I need time," he muttered. Claire scoffed, slow and loud. "Time? Ethan, I'm 8 months pregnant. This child could come any—" "I know," he snapped, his voice louder than he intended. He shut his eyes, letting out a breath. "Claire, everything is happening at once. Naomi just lost her mother. Claire pointed at him with a trembling hand. "You walked away. You made that decision. And you pushed for it." "I pushed because you said you were unhappy," Claire fired back. "You told me you couldn't stay with her anymore." Ethan stood up. "I didn't expect it to feel like that." "Like what? Guilt?" she demanded. "Second thoughts." He looked away. That was answer enough. Claire folded her arms over her belly, her voice turning sharp. "Don't even think about backing out on me now. I won't let you." Ethan glared. "I'm not backing out. I'm just overwhelmed." She stared at him, her eyes narrowing. "You sure? Because you look like a man who regrets something." He didn't respond. Claire walked closer until she was a few inches from him. "Do you love me, Ethan?" His throat tightened. "Yes." "Say it like you mean it." He clenched his jaw. "I love you, Claire." But even he could hear how flat it sounded. Claire's eyes glistened, not with softness, but with frustration. "I need security. I need to know I'm not going to raise a baby with someone who's halfway in and halfway out." Ethan rubbed his temples. "I told you I want a life with you." "I've heard your words," Claire replied, her voice rising. "But your actions. Ethan, you're pacing like you want to run back to her." He froze. Claire stepped back slightly, studying his face. "You do, don't you?" "No," he said quickly, too quickly. Before she could fire back, someone knocked at the front door. 3 rapid knocks, firm and impatient. Claire frowned. "Were you expecting someone?" "No," Ethan said, confused. He opened the door, expecting maybe a delivery driver or a neighbor. Instead, he found Troy, Naomi's older cousin, standing on the porch with rain still dripping from his jacket. Troy wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He looked controlled. Too controlled, which was worse. Ethan swallowed. "Troy, what are you—" "We need to talk," Troy said. Ethan stepped outside and closed the door halfway behind him. "Look, man, if this is about what happened earlier—" "It is," Troy said, "and about something else." Ethan crossed his arms, trying to sound calm. "I didn't mean to upset anyone. Naomi—" Troy cut him off. "You didn't just upset her. You crushed her, and everyone saw it." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't planned." "That's obvious," Troy said dryly. "But I'm not here about that anymore." Ethan frowned. "Then what?" Troy pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "You should know what Naomi just found out." "What are you talking about?" Troy lifted the paper and tapped it once. "Her mother's will." Ethan blinked. "Her will? Why would that involve me?" Troy didn't sugarcoat it. "Because Naomi just inherited $500 million. Ethan's breath hitched. "What?" he whispered. "She's the sole heir," Troy said bluntly. "Properties, investments, accounts, everything." For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. $500 million? Naomi? Naomi, who clipped coupons and refused to buy brand-name cereal? Naomi, who saved every spare dollar for the baby? Naomi, who had once cried because they couldn't afford a better apartment? He shook his head. "No, that can't be right." "Read it yourself if you want," Troy said, holding up the paper. "She didn't even know until today. Lorraine showed her the documents." Ethan reached for the paper, but Troy pulled it back. "She doesn't want you touching anything that belongs to her now," Troy said firmly. "And I'm here to tell you, don't try it. Don't come around acting sorry. Don't pretend to care. She's done." "I'm not after her money," Ethan snapped, though the words sounded thin even to him. Troy raised an eyebrow. "Maybe not yesterday, but now." Who knows? Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. The porch felt too small. The air felt too warm. His stomach twisted like he was suddenly sick. Naomi, quiet, gentle, loyal Naomi, was now worth more than he could comprehend, and he had walked away from her an hour earlier. He whispered under his breath, "She didn't tell me." "Of course she didn't tell you," Troy replied. "Her mother didn't trust you, and look how right she was." Ethan stepped back a little, stunned. Troy's eyes hardened. "Stay away from Naomi, and stay away from the baby." He turned and walked down the steps toward his truck, leaving Ethan frozen on the porch. Inside, Claire watched through the window, her expression changing as she read Ethan's body language. Shock, confusion, panic, and something else she had never seen on his face before. Regret. Ethan slowly walked back inside. Claire didn't even let him sit before asking, "What did he say?" Ethan stared at the floor. Her mother left her everything. Naomi just inherited more than $500 million. Claire blinked. "You're joking." "No," he whispered. "I'm not." Claire's face went pale. "You mean Naomi? Naomi Benton is a multimillionaire?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "She is." Claire pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. "So, you left your pregnant wife right before she found out she's incredibly wealthy?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence filled the room like fire. Claire let out a slow, shaky breath. "Ethan, what did you do?" He ran both hands over his face, his voice trembling for the first time. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." But this is only the beginning of the fallout, because regret has a way of growing teeth, and Ethan is about to feel every single bite. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay on Claire's stiff couch with his arms crossed over his chest, staring at the ceiling until the dark slowly shifted into morning light. Every few minutes, he replayed the burial scene in his head. Naomi collapsing, relatives shouting at him, the rain falling over everything like the sky itself was disappointed in him. And then Troy's voice echoed, "She's the sole heir. Everything is hers. $500 million. The number pressed on him like a weight he couldn't push off. Claire walked into the living room around 7, barefoot, her hair messy, eyes swollen from crying. She leaned against the doorway, studying him. "You didn't sleep," she said. "No," he muttered. She crossed her arms. "So, what are you thinking?" He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he admitted. "Everything's changed." Claire tilted her head, a bitter twist in her expression. "Changed for who?" "For everyone," Ethan said quietly. Claire let out a humorless laugh. "Don't play dumb, you're talking about her." Ethan rubbed his face. "I'm trying to figure out what to do." "Do?" she repeated sharply. "You're not doing anything. You're not going back to her." "I didn't say I was going back." "You're thinking about it," she snapped. "I can see it all over your face." Ethan stood up. "She's carrying my child, Claire." "And I'm carrying your child too," Claire shot back. 8 months pregnant, Ethan, and now you're standing here acting like you've just discovered a new direction in life. "It's not that," he muttered. "Then what is it?" she demanded. "Say it." He took a long breath. "I shouldn't have left her like that." Claire's jaw tightened. "Because she's rich now? That's what this is." "No," he said sharply. "Because she's hurting. Because I made her collapse at her mother's burial." Claire narrowed her eyes. "Funny how that didn't bother you yesterday." "It did," he snapped. "But I didn't realize how bad it was until you realized what she's worth," Claire cut in. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but his voice died before the words came. Claire stepped closer, her hand gripping the back of a chair. "This is why I told you to tell her everything before making a move," she said. "Now she has every reason to hate you. And trust me, her family won't let you anywhere near her again." Ethan's chest tightened at the reminder. "She has my baby." "And I do too," Claire whispered, tapping her belly. "So are we just back up now?" He stared at her. "That's not what I meant." Claire sank onto the couch, breathing hard. "Ethan, I know you. You think you're confused, but deep down you know exactly what you want." "What does that mean?" he muttered. "It means you're regretting the wrong thing," she said. "You're not upset about the divorce. You're upset because you didn't get to leave on your own terms. You're upset because she got something you didn't expect." Ethan clenched his jaw. I'm not after her inheritance. Claire held his gaze. Then why is it all you've thought about since you heard? He didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. Where are you going? Claire demanded. For a drive. She stood instantly. No, you're not leaving me here worrying. Claire, I need to think. You can think right here, she snapped. We're supposed to be a family. Ethan turned back to her, his voice low. I need space. Claire's eyes filled, not with sadness, but anger so sharp it made the room feel hotter. Space, she repeated. That's exactly how this started, with you needing space from your wife. He looked away. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Don't make me the woman you used to escape your problems. I'm not, he whispered. Then prove it, she said, trembling. Stay. Ethan hesitated, just long enough to confirm her fear, then stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Claire sank to the floor, her hands shaking as they clutched her belly. Her breathing quickened, not from stress alone. A contraction rolled through her. She gasped softly. Please, not now. Meanwhile, Ethan drove aimlessly through Modesto, past shops opening for the morning, past people walking dogs or grabbing coffee. Every ordinary sight felt like a slap. Everyone else's life looked stable, predictable, safe. His was a burning mess. He parked near a small park, shut off the engine, and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. How did I let everything fall apart? He whispered. A soft knock on the window made him jerk up. It was Jermaine, a coworker he hadn't spoken to in weeks. Jermaine leaned down, squinting. Man, you look like you lost a boxing match with your thoughts. Ethan opened the door. Jermaine, hey. Jermaine raised an eyebrow. You all right? You look rough. I messed up, Ethan muttered. Jermaine sat on the edge of the car door. With Naomi? Ethan hesitated. Jermaine already guessed the answer. Jermaine sighed. People been talking. Word gets around fast, you know. Folks heard about what happened at the cemetery. Ethan winced. I didn't plan for it to go that way. Nobody plans something like that, Jermaine said. But you did it, and you gotta live with it. Ethan swallowed. She inherited a lot. Jermaine shrugged. And I didn't know. So? Jermaine repeated. That don't change the way you treated her. The truth cut deeper than Ethan expected. Jermaine stood fully now, crossing his arms. Listen, man, you wanted another life. You wanted Claire? Then stick to your choice. But don't go crawling back to Naomi because her situation changed. That's not why... Jermaine held up a hand. Then sit with your actions. Don't try to fix them with money. And don't mess up her peace again. Ethan stared at the ground. Jermaine stepped back. You can't undo what you did. You gotta deal with it. Without waiting for a reply, he walked away. Ethan leaned against the car, his chest tight. For the first time, he saw his choices without excuses. He hadn't just walked away from Naomi. He had walked away from the life he was supposed to build with her, and now he was realizing the price. But before he can even figure out how to handle this regret, something urgent is happening back at Claire's place, and it's about to push everything into a new crisis. Claire tried to stand, but the pain tightened around her abdomen again, sharper this time. She gripped the edge of the couch with both hands, breathing slowly the way the nurse taught her in class, but her breaths kept breaking. Sweat formed along her hairline. Her legs trembled. She whispered to herself, It's too early. Not yet. But the contraction didn't care. It rolled through her again, stronger than the last. She grabbed her phone and dialed Ethan. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Claire threw the phone onto the couch, her chest tightening, not from the pain, but from the fear. I can't do this alone, she whispered. She lowered herself onto the floor, leaning against the couch cushions while she waited for the pain to ease. But the truth settled in her stomach heavier than the contractions. Ethan wasn't here. Not physically, not emotionally, not completely. She had fought so hard to pull him into a new life, but she never stopped to see how broken he already was. And now she was the one left shaking on the floor, terrified and alone. Across town, Ethan sat on a bench near the park, staring at his phone screen. 10 missed calls, all from Claire. His stomach dropped. He stood so quickly the bench shook. As he rushed to the car, a horrible thought struck him. What if something's wrong with the baby? He jumped into the car, slammed the door, and sped off, heart pounding with panic. Not guilt this time, fear. When he reached the house, Claire was curled on the living room rug, her breathing uneven, her hands gripping the cushions like life preservers. Ethan rushed in. "Claire, hey, talk to me." She looked up, her eyes wet and angry. "Where were you?" He knelt beside her. "I'm sorry, I didn't see the calls. What's happening?" "A contraction," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Maybe more. I don't know." Ethan swallowed hard. Okay, we're going to the hospital." He helped her to her feet, grabbed the hospital bag, and guided her to the car. Claire clutched his arm with every step. Her breathing hitched as she lowered herself onto the seat. He slammed the door and ran around to get in. The silence on the drive was thick. Claire finally spoke. "If you're going to leave," she whispered, "at least stay long enough to make sure our baby's okay." The words hit Ethan like a punch. He didn't respond. He didn't know how to respond. All he could think was how fast everything was slipping out of his control. Once they reached the hospital, nurses rushed Claire into an exam room, checking her vitals, her blood pressure, the baby's heartbeat. Ethan stood against the wall, watching helplessly as they placed monitors on her belly. A nurse finally turned to him. "She's having pre-labor contractions. We're going to try to slow them down. Stress can bring them on early." Ethan whispered, "Is she going to be okay?" "We'll monitor her closely," the nurse said, "but she needs rest and stability." Ethan sank into a chair. Stability. The word hit him harder than anything Troy or Jermaine had said. He hadn't given anyone stability, not Naomi, not Claire, not the babies. He put his face in his hands, breathing heavily. Claire watched him from the bed. "You look like you're falling apart." "I am," he admitted. She hesitated before speaking again. "Do you regret choosing us?" He lifted his head slowly. Her question didn't hold spite this time. It held fear. "No," he said softly. "I regret how I did everything. I regret hurting her. I regret the timing. I regret everything," Claire whispered. He didn't deny it. A nurse came in and dimmed the lights, leaving them in quiet shadows while the machines hummed. Claire watched the ceiling as she spoke. "You know, Naomi deserves better," she said softly. "Even I can see that. A woman who's 7 months pregnant should never have to crumble alone like she did." Ethan closed his eyes. "You think I don't feel guilty?" Claire asked. "I do. I didn't ask you to hurt her like that. I asked you to be honest." "I wasn't honest with myself," Ethan murmured. Claire breathed slowly, calmer now. "So what happens now? When she's rich? When she has support? When she doesn't need you at all?" He swallowed. "I guess nothing happens. She moves on, and I live with it." Claire turned her head to look at him. "And will you?" He didn't answer. He knew the truth, a truth that grew louder with every heartbeat. He had lost Naomi long before the inheritance. The money only made the loss undeniable. 2 days later, after the doctors managed to stabilize Claire, Ethan stepped outside the hospital to get some air. He leaned against the wall, letting the breeze hit his face. His phone buzzed. A message from Lorraine. "Naomi is safe. Stop calling. Stop asking. Move on." Ethan stared at the screen. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. He hadn't reached out. He'd been too ashamed, but the fact that her family assumed he would try to crawl back made the shame even heavier. He typed and deleted several replies. Finally, he wrote, "I'm glad she's okay," and left it at that. He looked out at the parking lot, watching cars come and go, people living normal lives, people with second chances he no longer had. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" For the first time, the answer settled clearly. He had broken the woman who once gave him everything, only to realize too late that she had become the woman who no longer needed him at all. Naomi wasn't the one losing anything now. She had a future, a child, a fortune, a family, a chance at real love someday. Ethan was the one left behind, scraping together the pieces of a life he had shattered with his own choices, choices he couldn't rewind, choices he had to live with. Because some mistakes don't just follow you. They shape the rest of your life. Pain doesn't reveal itself all at once. It arrives in pieces, through betrayal, through grief, through moments when life feels unfair. But strength comes in pieces too. Naomi found her strength the moment she realized her worth didn't depend on who stayed or who walked away. And that's the truth buried in this story. People who don't value you don't get to define you. People who leave don't get to decide your future. You decide that. Naomi didn't rise because she became rich. She rose because she chose herself. And Ethan? He learned a truth many discover too late. When you mistreat the right person, you lose far more than you ever expect. If you found this story powerful, share it with someone who might need the reminder that their value doesn't come from someone else's approval. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you follow along for the next one.